Our story starts out like most before, a young jalapeno on the floor of your local Papa John's. But this jalapeno was no ordinary jalapeno. This was Hank. Hank was always playful, bringing joy to all those who surrounded him. He was loved and adored by the entire Papa John's team. He bounced and he climbed, and he played and he rhymed. He was well behaved and cute in every way. Here he is brushing his teeth just before bed. A quarter is in the photo to show you his size, but unknown to most, a dark hate grew inside of Hank, a force so dark it would bring the biggest man to his knees. And on his way to his room, he stopped mid-step and wondered what his world would be like if he wasn't Hank, if he was different. Different, yes, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's why nobody understood young Hank, because nobody was truly like him. Things would definitely change that dark Valentine's Day. Hank would no longer play the everyday games his friend played. He knew he was better than them. He was more powerful, more smart, more clever. It's funny how some things just show up, even when you're not looking for them. And at that moment, Hank realized his true potential, his true purpose. The world was his to take, and take he most certainly did. He stood next to the knife that shined on the shelf. He saw his reflection in the blade, and for one moment, understood who he was. And as he slipped his fingers around the handle of the blade and felt the texture and felt the warmth and the power, Hank changed. No longer that cute jalapeno, he would strike fear in anyone who came across his path. And as he looked at his father, remembering how he never hugged Hank, never told him that he loved him, how he always favored his brother more, he knew what he had to do. Yes, the man who knew best. Hank's father never let Hank go to the ball, and every pretty girl should be able to go to a ball. But Hank's father never let him. Hank hated his father. And almost as if Hank's father had heard him at that very moment, he waved. And it meant more to Hank than that one time that Morgan Freeman picked him off his pizza. And Morgan Freeman hates jalapenos. And that's what set Hank over the edge. He jumped onto his father's shoulder and grabbed his face and kissed him gently on the cheek. Just before stabbing him in the back. And Hank's father screamed. Hank laughed. Yes, and Hank's father fell onto the sink, trying to keep himself up, and Hank felt the true power, and he smiled. A single tear fell from Hank's father's eyes, and the end was definitely near for his father. As he grew cold and weak, Hank stood over him, smiling. Hank's father fell to the ground, and Hank waited for him to die. He most certainly did wait, and he looked at the blade that Ashley forgot to put blood on, so this totally looks fake, by the way. Hank grabbed the blade and with a calm step walked outside to dispose of the weapon. He carried it to a place he knew well, a place he would play when mother and father would fight, a secret place. The storm drain right behind where a murder just took place. Hank knew the police would never look there. Throwing it into the drain, he waited for the blade to hit the concrete, and as it hit the bottom, Hank knew this was just the beginning. Quickly, he went inside. Hank grabbed a trash bag from the shelf and walked over to his father's lifeless body. He sat down and looked at his father one last time and chuckled to himself as he almost forgot to check for any money or valuables from the body before he dumped him. He threw his father's body into a bag and tied it up tight. He grabbed his hand and began dragging him out of the bag. Look, if you were the size of Hank, it would take you a while to drag a 215-pound man out of a building. Show a little compassion, okay? It's first murder. And Hank, with all of his might, tossed the body into the trash and, just before throwing him in, stopped for a photo. Hank's father, Dio, is now sleeping with the pizza boxes. We probably should have blurred out the business that collects the garbage from the, No matter! Hank went back to clean up the blood, which tasted awful, by the way. I had that pizza sauce taste in my mouth for hours. Hank took a shower to wash the blood off and became new. This would be the last time that Hank felt feelings for anything. Hank began smoking heavily. Hank had no regrets about the evil deeds, but was nervous that somebody was on his trail. Hank was called into question by Detective Klaus, who was a bastard. Hank knew there was trouble up ahead. And there was. Hank got the chain. 38 years, 2 months, 1 day, 6 hours, and 7 minutes, with no possibility of parole. Hank was welcomed by the Mexican Mafia. Machete, who was the leader of the Mexican Mafia, told Hank that this was his home. Hank was glad that he found people just like him to look after him, because after all, Hank was just a little guy. Machete sent his men over to greet him and welcome him to the CF prison. The greeting turned into a bloody battle as the gang tore Hank apart and told Hank never cross paths with them. Machete then raped our poor little Hank, and as the Banana members stood by and watched, not really sure why they're called the Banana members. Hank healed in the hospital and got out with only a few scars. He would seek revenge on the Mafia and on the Banana members. He worked and got bigger and stronger. Hank got buff, ripped, and was ready to tear the heart out of Machete and feed it to him. His words, not mine. After Hank killed Machete, he waited to go to the yard to dispose of the weapon. It wasn't long until Klaus brought the hammer down. Spelled his name wrong, by the way. Hank awaited his death sentence, and I know what you're asking. Did he find Jesus? Yes. He was in the next cell over, but wasn't there for long. Hank sat in the chair waiting to die, and as the warden asked him if he had any last words, Hank said, "I didn't get my SpaghettiOs. I asked for SpaghettiOs, and I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." That was the last anyone ever heard from Hank. Hank was killed July 28th, 2014. And Hank will always be covered, but not forgotten. Hank was buried, and will hopefully one day grow into a beautiful Spanish olive tree. We used an olive to make it look like he had been fried. Limited budget, you understand. Hank touched all of our lives. Unfortunately, he touched several of our children. Hank was not a rich man, was not a proud man, he was not a successful man, nor was he especially attractive, articulate, or even remotely respected. Neither was he particularly well liked or hygienic, so I guess what I'm really trying to say is there's cake in the back of the house, and if we hurry, we might catch the second half of the Bulls game. Welcome to the SlaydeTV channel. You'll see other ridiculous shit like this soon in the near future. None of it's relatable, some of it's probably not funny, but it keeps me out of prison, so I'm going to keep doing it. The only reason why I'm not doing this in person is because you're going to see my big dumb face at the end of this video, because it's where the SlaydeTV supposed logo goes. It's really not a logo, it's my big dumb face, with just plain lettering. It says SlaydeTV underneath it. My face is pretty original, I figured I'd keep it that way. 10 minutes is a pretty long commitment, so I appreciate you pulling through all the way. Please like, share, subscribe. The only reason why I'm saying that is because everybody seems to say that on their YouTube channel and all of their videos, so it must be doing something. I appreciate the support. Ah, there it is. See? Told you.